In today's video, I'm going to give you 7 clues to spot a toxic manager in the job interview. And stick around to the end because at the very end, I'm going to give you 2 more questions you can ask them to also identify, are they going to be a toxic manager so you can avoid them. Let's go. Look, there are a few things that are going to impact your overall job well-being when you're at an employer than your boss. If your boss is great, you're probably going to have a good time. If your boss is terrible, that is going to be an unmitigated nightmare. So avoiding people like that is absolutely key. So let's get into the 7 different ways you can spot a toxic manager in the job interview, criticizing anybody at their company. So if you're interviewing with someone and they criticize people in their company, whether it's another department or their own people in their department, you do not want to work for that person. I have definitely seen it where a hiring manager is criticizing members of their team. I need to hire this position because the people on my team are not getting the job done. They're just not hard workers, blah, 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 blah. You know who wouldn't say that? A great manager. You know who would say that? A terrible manager. So if you find someone who is being critical of members of their own company in the job interview, you do not want to work there. One of the more frustrating types of people to have a conversation with are people who interrupt you constantly, because those people give you the feeling that they don't respect what you're saying. And the conversation is all about them. Well, it also goes for the interview. If you're interviewing someone who is going to be your boss and they are constantly, repeatedly interrupting you, you probably do not want to work for that person. That is not a person who understands how it is to communicate with them. That's a person who's going to be really, really, really challenging to deal with. And if they're doing it in an interview where, for the most part, they should be listening to you and assessing whether or not you'd be a good fit, they're repeatedly interrupting you, again, that is not a person you want to work for. This next one requires reading between the lines, but it's incredibly powerful. If you're in a group interview and you have the hiring manager and a few members of their team, the sense you get between them, like sensing what their relationship is like, can tell you so much. It is very easy to spot people who report to someone who like that person, who respect that person, who are willing to follow them. It is visible most of the time. You see some people interacting, you can usually tell, they respect that person as a leader. But when they don't, and they do not enjoy that person's company, it is typically palpable. You can see it. The way they interact, it is tense. There is friction. Avoid that person. Now, I would want to look for multiple of these signs, but this is one I would pay very close heed to. If I saw that and there was tons of tension between those people in a time where they're trying to interact with a person outside of the organization and potentially sell them on joining the team, that would be a massive, massive concern to me. Hey, if you are liking this video, do me a favor, a free favor, hit that like button. That like button tells YouTube I don't suck, helps the channel, and motivates me to make more videos like this. If during the interview, the manager downplays any of your accomplishments, like you say, I'm really proud of this, and they go, well, that's not that big of a deal. I would literally get up and walk out then. That is not the type of person you want to work for. That is someone who is downgrading the things you are proud of. You wouldn't tolerate that in any other facet of your life. You wouldn't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who did that. You wouldn't have a friend who they said, hey, I did this, I'm really proud. And they go, that sucks and you're terrible. You would not be friends with that person. You also don't want to work for that person. That is another huge red flag. If a hiring manager is asking you questions in the interview process, and then when you answer, they are getting visibly irritated at the things you say, you don't want to work for that person. Now, this is incredibly broad, right? But if they're asking you questions and you're explaining it and they're like, ugh, that right there is a huge sign. Do not ignore that sign. This is a person who should be listening to you to learn about you, not immediately reacting and judging you harshly. If they do that, they're going to be terrible to work for. If they don't ask you at the end of the interview if you have any questions for them, that is not the type of person that you want to work for. I get this comment all the time on YouTube videos. They say, Ben, they didn't ask me if I had any questions at the end. Is that a good or a bad sign? Well, to me, it's a sign that you want to avoid them. Look, making a move in your career is a massive risk, right? Going from a known commodity, a stable job perhaps, and then going to a new place with new people, new goals, new objectives. If they don't afford you the opportunity to ask a few questions, they're not very considerate. And if they're not considerate during the interview process, they are certainly not going to be considerate as an employer. If they're not prepared for your interview, they're probably going to be a bad boss. Look, interviews are big, right? They're big things. They're big for you. They're big for the hiring manager because they're adding to their team. It's important. And if a hiring manager shows up to your interview unprepared, doesn't remember like who you are, what role it is, has not looked over your resume, doesn't know anything about your background, you don't want to work for that person. They would never tolerate it the other way around. If you show up to an interview and you have no idea about the organization, what the organization does, you're ill prepared, they would immediately discount you as a candidate, and rightfully so. So they need to be prepared as well. That is a two-way street. If they show up to your interview unprepared, that's a huge issue. Now I want to give you 2 questions you can ask them. If you go through your whole interview and you don't really see any of these signs, or maybe you see one, but you're still like, I really want to know if this person's going to be good to work for, these are 2 questions you can ask, and their answers will be very clear whether or not they are a good leader or a bad leader. And the first one is, in terms of your team, what are you most proud of? This is simple. And a good manager who is a good leader will have plenty of different things they can say about their team. They'll have plenty of examples of why they're proud of their team. I am a team leader, and this would be so easy for me to answer because my team has given me many things to be proud of. But if someone goes, oh, I don't know, I don't know. I mean, I guess they do their jobs. Bad manager, okay? It's going to be so easy. They're going to have a great answer, good. Or they're not going to have one, or they're going to have a bad answer. You do not want to work for this person. This next one's a bit challenging for people, but I love it. As a candidate, you should absolutely ask this because working for a person is, it's going to make a huge impact on your time at the company, whether they're a good manager or a bad manager. And that question is, what is your approach to working with a member of your team who has missed a goal or a deadline, right? You're basically asking them, how do you manage people when the going gets rough? And how they answer this will tell you a ton about what kind of manager they are. If they're like, I look at what went wrong and I work with them and we partner to find out what they could do differently, and then we try to move forward, solve blah, 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 right? That's positive. If they go, oh, I don't tolerate that. On my team, if you miss a goal, you're out of here. Okay, well, that seems harsh, right? It's another question where their answer, the way they answer it, I don't even need to describe it to you because it's going to be clear as day whether or not they're a good manager or a not so good manager. Speaking of things you need to be worrying about, have you looked online at Glassdoor and read their rating? Okay, that's another thing you need to do. But what if you do that and you only see 1 or 2 bad things? That's why I made this video here. This video here teaches you how to ask in the interview about bad Glassdoor ratings. Having a bad Glassdoor review, it's not a good thing, but it also might not be a bad thing. So you've got to ask about it and inform yourself. So I'm done here, but I'll see you over there.